Board members, please come to the dais. First, let me apologize for us being a couple of minutes late. We were caught up on other business, but we are thrilled you're here tonight. And good evening and welcome. The focus of tonight's public hearing is the initial funding request for the Fairfax County Public Schools internal security review recommendations. Other elements of safety and security are still being developed, and those will be discussed at a later date. On behalf of the school board, I would like to thank you for taking the time this evening to come and talk to us about this very important topic. At this time, we ask that you turn off or silence your cell phones. Tonight, we have 25 registered speakers. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes, and to be respectful of everyone, we ask that you stay within that time limit. The timer will start when you begin to speak, and you will be able to see the time remaining on the clock on the lectern. The buzzer will sound at the conclusion of your 3 minutes. 3 names and their speaker numbers will be announced at a time. When you hear your name and speaker number, please move closer to the front of the auditorium so you will be ready when it is your turn to speak. If speakers are not here when their name is called, those names will be called again at a later time. If you have not registered to speak tonight but would like an opportunity to address the board, please see one of the clerks to sign up for one of the 5 extra reserved speaker slots. Your name will be called after the registered speakers. Also, there will be an opportunity for individuals to speak if there are no-show speaker slots remaining at the end of the hearing. After all the registered speakers have addressed the board, I will announce whether there are any no-show slots available. After you have spoken, please see one of the clerks so that she may collect your contact information for the record. Throughout the meeting, you may notice that board members leave the table at times, but they will have access to a TV that is broadcasting the public hearing in the back. Thank you all for attending tonight's public hearing and for sharing your comments and concerns. I will call the first 3 names. Mr. Jonathan Smith, Ms. Karan Murari, and Ms. Chloe Yazdani. Mr. Smith? Ms. Murari? Ms. Yazdani? And following Ms. Yazdani, we will have Eric Muchnick, Roy Hayes, and Kim Perks.
All right. Can I start?
Please do.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Chloe, and I'm a teacher for Fairfax County Public Schools. As a teacher and member of the community, I've seen great gaps in our security systems that leave students, teachers, and staff members at risk. If you visit a public school during the day, you are required to buzz in, have an ID, and use our ID scanning system to create a visitor's badge. However, after school and on weekends, our schools are available for community use. When schools are open to the community, a door is left unlocked for the participants to use. There is supposed to be someone monitoring the door. But in my 5 years of teaching and attending community events at multiple Fairfax County schools, I've yet to see one door monitored. Typically, the person who's supposed to monitor the door is also supposed to be cleaning the classrooms. Events like basketball games span several hours. How is a school's custodian supposed to be able to do their job and provide constant security? It's obviously not possible. In June, I held an after-school event in my classroom. I told parents I would be with their kids at the main office door after the event. However, I was surprised to find all the parents at my classroom door. They said the front door to our school was completely unlocked, so they just came in. The doors were unlocked and unsupervised because of our book fair. A few minutes later, I left the school through a separate door on the opposite side of the building. It was also unlocked for a basketball game. I would like to emphasize that this is not just limited to my school. This is an FCPS problem because of our outdated security policies. I first took my concerns to FCPS security management to ask for an explanation on our door policy. I was assured there are systems in place to detect an intruder. These systems are not effective. In today's world, a door to a school should never be unlocked. Multiple times a year, I'm asked to huddle my 7-year-old students in my classroom for a lockdown drill. Yet multiple times a week, I leave my school to find the doors completely open. I have friends who teach around the country who cannot believe a major school system like FCPS would ever allow doors to be unlocked. In other counties, this is not standard practice, even for community events. I have a worry that the concerns shared tonight will lead to yet another task force or 28-page PDF. Could we just start by having our school doors locked at all times? I'm tired of pretending that our schools are safe because they are not, and we deserve better. Thank you.
Mr. Muchnick?
Good evening, and thanks for allowing us the time. I just wanted to address a little bit as you review funding for training and look at different dynamics of security. Run, hide, fight, which is the national standard of security training. Let's think of it for a moment that run, hide, fight is essentially the stop, drop, and roll of active shooter training. Now imagine if you walked into a school, looked at their fire management plan, and all they had inside was stop, drop, and roll. You'd be concerned. You'd be concerned because there's no management. And one of the greatest gaps I've seen at most schools that I've worked with, and I'm a security professional, is there is no process for training and developing policies and procedures to manage an event outside of run, hide, fight. And for those with liability and duty to care, which really everyone here has, and is always a major concern, having the appropriate procedures to address these things in terms of process is critical. So as you look at training and as you look at different dynamics, assessments are great, and after 9/11, the world was awash in assessments. Every facility I know had an assessment. Assessments are meaningless unless you follow it with training that tests the processes that you're looking at. So again, just food for thought. There's been some great work done by the security operations team for FCPS. It's really great. This is something that I see time and again is not addressed. So my only ask is, as you consider these things, look at process within the schools. As a quick example, the fire alarm, which I get asked about quite a bit. We addressed that about 3 years ago. And a fire alarm, when it's pulled, after Parkland, everyone was concerned, what if that happens again? What do we do? There's schools that are looking at secondary alarm systems that would sound if there's an active shooter. A quick and easy solution for that is simply make a PA announcement after a fire alarm to confirm that there's a fire and to start evacuation. No one's died in a fire in a school since like 1955. The kindergarten cop 30-second out the door rule is kind of out the window at this point. So if we can take 10 seconds to confirm, then a fire alarm suddenly becomes a non-issue. And you don't have to have specialized active shooter training. You simply run a fire drill and you test those dynamics. So things like that in terms of process become critical. So again, just wanted to address that. I appreciate all the great work that's being done, and thank you for the time again.
Thank you. Mr. Roy Hayes, followed by Kim Perks and David Kinsler.
Hello, thank you for the time. My name is Roy Hayes. I'm a resident of Fairfax County. I've also attended Fairfax County Public School from 1st grade to 12th grade, ultimately graduating in Herndon High School in 2005. I still give back to the Herndon community by coaching basketball and flag football over the past couple of years. I mention all this to illustrate that school safety in Fairfax County is a personal issue to me. In my current job, I design, implement, and maintain security systems for the federal government. The security systems that my company deploys secure some of the most sensitive government installations for mass shooting events like Parkland, which was the cause for this review. It is disheartening to see that mass shooting events still occur at schools, theaters, and other public areas when I know for a fact that federal installations are safer than this. While I agree with most of the findings in the internal review, I find that there is an over-reliance on CCTV cameras. The report does not mention how these cameras will be monitored or the process to respond to suspicious activity. Without such a process, the cameras cannot proactively prevent a tragedy and become an observer of a potentially deadly event. The report states that CCTV systems drive the deployment of other technical and physical security systems like electronic door access. This is not true. Most of the security systems I deploy are in classified facilities, which don't allow for CCTV. Yet we still implement additional security protocols such as electronic door accesses, duress buttons, and gunshot detection system. This brings me to a second point I would like to make. The current plan implicitly relies on students and staff to know what an indoor gunshot sounds like and then notify authorities. However, the plan does not call for a live fire demonstration to allow staff to internalize what a gunshot actually sounds like. Many people believe that they know what a gunshot sounds like, but they won't, not indoors. In another hallway, it will sound like a loud noise. And because you're all good people, when you hear screaming, you'll move towards that and move into a gunman. This is not my professional opinion. It's backed up by facts. Homeland Security found that the average school shooting lasts 12.5 minutes, but officer response time is 18 minutes. However, the average police response time to other active shooter events is only 3 minutes, indicating that there's a notification issue. Gunshot detection systems can immediately notify the police department and the school's emergency management team within 10 seconds of the initial gunshot. Combine that with mass notification, you can notify every student and staff member in your facility within 30 seconds. I recommend that FCPS look at doing an RFI, or request for information, on potential gunshot detection systems. I also recommend that FCPS implement a live fire drill to allow students and staff to understand what a gunshot actually sounds like indoors. And lastly, I recommend that FCPS release what their process is for monitoring CCTV cameras in high schools before they move to implement them in middle school and elementary. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Ms. Perks, followed by Mr. Kinsler, David Kinsler, and Sean Perryman.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kim Perks. I have 2 children in FCPS. Megan McLaughlin is my school board rep, and I'm a volunteer with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. There are many facets to school security and safety, and many people here tonight with whom I agree with their views. You're going to hear from other moms members, NAACP, SEPTA, and others. In an attempt to diversify the comments, I want to speak specifically to the threat assessment protocol and safe gun storage. I learned about the threat assessment protocol when I recently attended the Commonwealth School Safety Forum hosted by Brian Moran. I applaud Virginia for coming up with a system unique to our state that will assess any threat brought to our attention. As with any policy, threat assessment is only as good as the actual execution. The policy was explained in great detail by the manager of the Virginia Center for School and Campus Safety. We then heard repeatedly from the experts on the panel that there is no profile for a school shooter, no race, gender, or other descriptors that could assist with identification. What they failed to acknowledge, and is absent in the document Threat Assessment in Virginia Public Schools, Model Policies, Procedures, and Guidelines, is that there is a significant commonality among school shooters. Research tells us that over 3/4 of student school shooters obtain their firearm from their own home or a relative's home, usually unlocked. That's over 75%. I've recently spoken to someone in threat management, and he defined threat as intent plus capability. To that end, I understand that part of the threat assessment includes finding out if the individual targeted as a threat has attempted to buy a firearm or obtain a permit. Well, in order for an attempt to be capable, they need to access a firearm, not necessarily just buy one. Again, we know that over 75% of school shooters get their guns from their own home or a relative's home. So I put forward to you that it is imperative that we have enough staff to always ask specifically about the presence and storage of firearms in their homes and relatives' homes as part of the records check of the protocol. Easy access to firearms is not only relevant to school safety in regard to school shootings, easy access to guns contributes to many hundreds of teen suicides every year. Calling on research again, we know that having access to a gun is a more significant risk factor for suicide than mental illness. Just as schools recommend and advocate for parents to lock up their medications at home, schools should recommend safe gun storage. Suicide attempts by pills result in death 2% of the time. Suicide attempts by firearms lead to death 85% of the time. These issues rely on more counselors in schools rather than enforcers. Thank you for your time.
Mr. David Kinsler. Mr. Perryman. And following Mr. Perryman will be Sujata Hampton, Margaret Power, and Lori Dodd.
Hi, my name is Sean Perryman. I'm the Education Chair for the Fairfax County NAACP. I'm here to express the branch's support of Dr. Brainman's recommendation to hire 18 additional counselors. And even more importantly, I'm also here to express the branch's complete opposition to any plan that would add guns to schools, regardless of whether those weapons are carried by officers, teachers, or anyone else you can imagine arming. Gun violence, especially mass shootings in schools, is a huge problem. And as of late May, there were 23 school shootings in America where someone was either hurt or killed. That averages out to more than one a week. I understand that this type of violence in schools rightfully scares parents. Those that advocate for extreme solutions like arming teachers may be doing so out of love for their own children in an effort to protect them. There's nothing to suggest, however, that more police or more guns will fix the problem. In fact, the Parkland school shooting that sparked the county's review of its security process demonstrated that the presence of an officer does not mean that our places of learning become immune to school shootings. That's not an indictment of that officer or officers generally, it's just a reality. We cannot guarantee that more cops in schools will protect children and lead to less shooting. We do have evidence, however, that the introduction of cops to schools lead to more common problem, the criminalization of Black, brown, and disabled students. And it's my love and effort to protect those children that leads me to say we need counselors, not cops. In March of this year, the Government Accountability Office released a report finding that Black students, boys, and those with disabilities were disproportionately punished in schools. These disparities were widespread and persisted regardless of the type of disciplinary action, level of school poverty, or type of school attended. This is a nationwide problem, and it contributes directly to the school-to-prison pipeline. Introducing police officers in elementary schools would only serve to criminalize those vulnerable children earlier. FCPS is quick to point out that less than 1% of its students are subject to arrest. In a school system with over 180,000 students, that's hundreds of children. Those children are not meaningless, and the trauma of arrest is not insignificant. And when we see the same disproportionate punishment of children of color that we see throughout the nation, we need to take steps to fix that. These aren't statistics, they're people. I listened to a story earlier today of a parent of an autistic child who came to the school and found them arrested in handcuffs at 6 years old. This was in a Fairfax school. 6 years old. Can you imagine how that student felt? Can you imagine how that parent felt? This is why we cannot throw cops at this problem. We need to support our students with mental health services and fostering an environment that accepts all of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Sujata Hampton. Margaret Power.
Thank you for hearing my views. My name's Meg Power. I live on Kirby Road in McLean, and I'm the mother of 2 adults who are products of the school system, and I'm hoping that I'll soon be a grandmother of some other students to give you. And I want first to associate myself completely with Mr. Perryman's remarks and the position of the NAACP. It's critical that if we're going to build the one Fairfax and the caring community that you've mandated for our schools, that policing is not the answer, and the answer is largely in the report that you've gotten. I perhaps have one difference with him with regard to the recommendations of the report. Dr. Braben's already started implementing, but the plan to have a one-time increase of 18 mental health professionals doesn't begin to touch the problem of counselors and cops. And I hope when you consider the recommendations of this otherwise very balanced, measured, and scholarly report, that you're looking at a long-time plan to keep increasing the mental health workforce. The ratios of mental health professionals to students that were in the report are horrifying. Lots of things in there that are very helpful to all parents and adults in the community, telling us what you have and haven't done, making recommendations, like some of those you've just heard, and others on the technology and personnel. But the mental health section is too little, and it stops too soon. I hope you'll drastically change the ratio of mental and social service personnel in the schools, and that you'll look at a ratio that is higher and better and different in the high poverty schools. Since my kids were in school, we have found out that poverty alone predicts trauma, that children who are very poor are experiencing all kinds of trauma, and the effects is the same as any physical violence or military trauma. And in small brains, young brains rather, it changes their life prospects and the way they can implement and learn, fill their full potential. So I am very pleased that you're not proceeding in an atmosphere of fear and terror and urgency, but appropriate, rapid response to the few deficits we do have in this system that you can fix. Thank you.
Ms. Lori Dodd. Has Mr. Jonathan Smith arrived yet? Ms. Karan Marari? Mr. David Kinsler? Ms. Sujata Hampton? Okay. Then we'll proceed with Mr. Kofi Annan, followed by Kelly Garcia and Ms. Rachna Heiser.
Good evening. Like many of you that are here this evening, I'm the parent of 2 kids in FCPS. And like many of you, I too am concerned about their safety. But the fact that they are 2 African-American teenage boys adds another layer of concern that many of you may not understand or appreciate. Not only am I concerned for their safety, but I'm also concerned that they will be targeted for additional scrutiny by law enforcement officers assigned to their schools, or even arrested for something trivial because of the color of their skin. This is a sad reality that many families of color live with on a daily basis in America, and in Fairfax County has not escaped those realities. African-American children make up roughly 10% of the student population, yet account for 30% of the criminal charges issued in the county. The majority of those charges, SROs issue, have absolutely nothing to do with safety. We are told that SROs are the last line of defense against gangs looking to invade our schools. Yet according to the court records, SROs made 0 gang arrests over the last 2 years. However, they did charge 75 students with disorderly conduct in 2016 and 55 in 2017. Most of these charges needlessly perpetuate the school-to-prison pipeline for things FCPS is capable of handling administratively. The current MOU allows officers to operate as both administrators and officers whenever they choose. This risks stripping students of their constitutional rights, such as the right to not self-incriminate and the right to refuse a search. We might even assume that parents reserve the right to intervene on their kid's behalf if their kid is suspected of a crime, but the current policy does not issue those rights. We appreciate Superintendent Brabrand and Police Chief Rossler working on the MOU to fix some of these issues, and hopefully the final draft that is presented to this board will be more in line with the things that we're asking for, which is also in line with the guidance issued by the state. Because the current MOU is pretty much a blank check for police to do whatever they want, and far too many of our kids are paying dearly for childish behavior, childish mistakes. This approach is supported by both teachers unions, the Fairfax County PTA, and the Special Education PTA, along with the ACLU, People Power, and the Police Division Review Panel, in addition to several other community organizations. The smarter and more compassionate way to deal with juvenile misbehavior is doubling down on support systems that many of them lack in the home and in the community. Hiring more counselors who are equipped with the tools, to address these root causes of behavior and issues is the best long-term interest of both the students directly impacted as well as the community writ large. We also oppose any measures to arm teachers and to add any more SROs to expand the program to elementary schools, certainly not until we see dramatic changes in the arrest data and we have a fair policy in place. Thank you.
Kelly Garcia, followed by Ms. Rachna Heiser and Laura Jane Cohen.
Good evening, and thank you for holding this hearing. My name is Kelly Garcia, and I am the parent of an incoming sixth grader at Kings Glen Elementary School. Like all parents, I want my daughter to be safe. I don't want to be afraid that when I kiss her goodbye in the mornings, I'm not going to see her again at night. So I commend you for taking school safety seriously. I'm speaking today in my personal capacity as a parent and a resident of Fairfax County. But I'm also going to rely on my expertise that I have gained as a social psychologist and in my role as senior counsel at the National Women's Law Center. We are committed to advancing gender equity for all students and lifting up and centering the experience of women and girls, particularly women and girls, in policy discussions. So as you're considering proposals to make our schools safer, I'd like to share a few stories to highlight the lived experiences of students, and particularly girls of color, and ways that increasing the presence of security officers in our schools can make our schools more dangerous for our children, not safer. So in 2015, a police officer in Columbia, South Carolina, flipped 16-year-old Shikara out of her desk for reportedly ignoring her teacher's request to leave the classroom. By some accounts, the student had recently been put in foster care. And that same officer arrested another student, Naya Kinney, who spoke out against the violence. In April 2016, video emerged of a San Antonio police officer slamming Hanisa Valtez, a 12-year-old girl who was a sixth grader, the same grade that my daughter is in. He slammed her against a brick sidewalk after she got into a scuffle with another student. In March 2016, 6-year-old Madison Moore from Chicago was handcuffed near the school boiler for close to an hour for allegedly taking candy from her teacher's desk. As a result, her mother said she is now afraid of anyone in a school uniform. These stories underscore the ways in which police officers meant to keep students safe in school have instead brutalized and criminalized our children. In fact, data from the Civil Rights Data Collection shows that the presence of police has increased, that as the presence of police in schools has increased, rates of arrest and referrals to enforcement for minor and nonviolent offenses has increased for Black and Native American students in particular. This feeds into the school to prison pipeline. As it stands now, Black girls in Virginia are 5.2 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. And arming school security personnel is particularly dangerous. Not only does this put all of our children at risk, but in particular our Black and brown children at risk of being shot by a security officer who mistakes a cell phone for a gun, it also opens the doors to any number of accidents. Earlier this year, an Alexandria school resource officer was charged with reckless handling of a firearm after he accidentally fired his weapon at George Washington Middle School. So rather than focusing on measures such as increasing security personnel and increasing the security presence in elementary schools and arming security personnel, Fairfax County Public Schools should consider adopting a host of processes to ensure that students and teachers have the resources they need so that they can effectively deal with children's behavioral problems. We should not be contributing and increasing security officers and forcing more students into the school to prison pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Heiser, and then I understand that Ms. Dodd is in the audience, so if she would like to come up. Yes, you'll be after Ms. Heiser.
Hello, everybody. I'm a parent of a child at Fairfax County Schools and a recent graduate. I'm here to talk to you about the risk of students with disabilities from having additional SROs and police officers in our school. Nationwide, students with disabilities are 12% of student enrollment, but 25% of those arrested or referred to law enforcement. In Fairfax County, students with disabilities are 14% of the population, but 40% of the discipline actions and referrals. This is a problem. The chance of a child with a disability being referred to discipline for disruptive behavior in FCPS schools is the highest of any group. This is in your own data you'll see in the strategic plan. About a little over 1 in 5. Meanwhile, since 1999, the chance of being killed in a school shooting on any given day is 1 in 614 million. Which is the real problem here? That's my question. There's no requirement in FCPS to require SROs to receive cultural competency, disability awareness training, implicit bias training, de-escalation techniques. There's no requirement that SROs collaborate with special education departments to understand the needs and behavior manifestations of disability. There's no requirements that SROs inform students or their parents of their constitutional rights before questioning them. There's no requirement that a student with an intellectual disability has the support of their special education case manager to understand the questions they are being asked by a school resource officer before they're potentially arrested. What's the real problem here? Where do we need the funding? We are throwing away our most vulnerable students and not protecting their rights and not training our school resource officers for a problem that has huge emotional component, but actually very little data to back it up as a real problem in comparison to the 1 in 5 students with disabilities. Meanwhile, studies are unclear as to the efficacy or benefit of SROs in schools in terms of reducing crimes or preventing school shootings. Let me repeat. Not a single study has proven the presence of SROs reduces crimes or school shootings. Meanwhile, since SROs have been in school, 40% higher incidences of referrals of students for law enforcement or arrest in many jurisdictions. Data should drive policy. Data does not back adding SROs. Instead of adding more SROs or spending more money on this, here's what I urge you to do. Add more behavior intervention teachers. We have 17 behavior intervention teachers under the Department of Special Services that serve over 200 schools. These are trained in behavior interventions. They work with gen ed and special ed. For $2 million, you could double the number of behavior intervention teachers. ABA coaches, we have 20 that serve 100 classrooms. They work with students with autism. For $2 million, you could double that too. Isn't that a much better use of funding? Isn't that a much better use of serving our students and being proactive in preventing behavior problems than reactive in dealing with school shootings, while horrible, statistically are much less of a problem for our school students than what our students with disabilities face? Collaboration with the current SROs, training for the current SROs, and let's get behavior intervention, not throwing people in jail. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
So we'll have Ms. Dodd,
Yes.
followed by Laura Jane Cohen, Heather Foglio, and Stephanie Hamel.
My name's Laurie Dodd. I'm a parent of a son and a daughter from Fairfax County Public Schools. I do not support the hardening of our schools in the name of safety. I do not support additional school resource officers or guns in our school or metal detectors or other things. And let me tell you that when my son was in middle school, my husband and I were called in to meet with the assistant principal. We were told that my son's name appeared on the hit list of a troubled student. So of course we were concerned about his safety. And that the discovery that his name was on the hit list was apparently done through some sort of threat assessment through the school administration and the counseling at the school. And they handled the situation. Now, out of respect for confidentiality, I never knew the name of the student who had threatened my son. But I would not have felt safer in dealing with that situation if there had been more police officers in the school, if there had been teachers with guns in the school. That situation was handled through mental health care, through compassion, through school counseling, through effective use of the school administration. And that is what we need to beef up. So, I've also spoken with my daughter who feels, school is already a site of a lot of anxiety for many of our students. More guns in the school would heighten that anxiety, not lessen it. So I believe that we need to handle our disturbed students who are in any school population with compassion and mental health care and behavioral intervention measures. And through training our teachers and our mental health staff, we need to handle our disabled students with respect for their problems, not weaponry. So I am concerned that hardening our school will just exacerbate the school to prison pipeline that none of us need. Those students who are disturbed need compassion, mental health care, and as well as protecting our other students. So I support, the other problem is Fairfax County, frankly, has more issues with student suicide than we do with homicide. We don't have school shootings. We need the small classrooms. We need the increased number of counselors that will enable those troubled students to get the support they need so that they don't act out in a way that harms other students. Thank you.
Heather Foglio, Stephanie Hamel, and Jeffrey Sherratt.
Good evening. My name's Heather Folio. I'm a mom of a rising fifth grader at Mantua and a seventh grader at Frost. Dalia Palchik is my neighbor and my representative on the school board. I first want to thank the school board for passing a resolution on gun violence prevention this last February following the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School massacre. As stated in the resolution, the board has placed the health and safety of students and employees as your highest priority, and we're going to hold you to that. We have failed and continue to fail our children by allowing them to become victims of Americans' gun violence crisis. Every Town for Gun Safety tracks school shootings, and there have been 50 incidents of gunfire on school grounds in 2018. 2 of those incidents occurred in Virginia, one at Norfolk State University and the other at George Washington Middle School in Alexandria. According to the Washington Post, more than 215,000 students at 217 schools have experienced gun violence since Columbine. The Post has found at least 141 kids, educators and staff have been killed, and 287 injured. The gun lobby would like us to believe that more guns will make us safer. If that was true, we would be the safest country in the world. In fact, Americans are 25 times more likely to be murdered by a gun than other developed countries. Guns in schools put children at risk of unintentional shootings and escalating conflict. Moms demand action, teachers, school safety experts, and law enforcement all oppose arming teachers as a solution to gun violence. It is a dangerous proposal that would, in reality, make our children less safe. Having armed teachers and/or civilians puts law enforcement in danger, delays law enforcement response, poses a risk to innocent bystanders, and in a school that would be children especially, places a financial burden on schools, school districts, and taxpayers with costs for training, firearms, ammunition, and insurance. Soldiers and law enforcement undergo extensive training to overcome the natural stress response in order to place themselves in the line of fire. David Chipman, a senior policy advisor for Gifford's Courage to Fight Gun Violence and a 25-year veteran of ATF, has shared his personal experience to get through his operations at ATF. He would pretend to be already dead, that he would have the courage to do what he needed to do safely to protect himself and his team. Not only are our military law enforcement officers tested under duress, but they must qualify at a shooting range once per quarter, at least in the case of the FBI and Secret Service. If they fail, they may have to take remedial training to then qualify. This all comes at a great cost to their organizations, but keeps the agents up to date in the latest defensive tactics and firearms equipment. And those are the David Chipmans of the world, who admit they are human and still can make mistakes. Once you step away from the intensive ongoing training, you don't necessarily retain all of your marksmanship skills. Thank you.
Thank you. And Miss Laura Jane Cohen, I apologize to you, but we really look forward to your remarks.
No problem at all. My name is Laura Jane Cohen, and I'm speaking to you today as a former teacher and mom of 2 FCPS kids, actually, who were drugged here today. On December 14th, when 20 children and 6 adults were gunned down at Sandy Hook Elementary School, we wept as a nation, promised change, and looked our kids in the eyes and told them they would be safe. And on December 15th, as our minivan doors closed, we watched as our kids walked into a place that we had all believed was a safe haven. Since that day, over 400 people have been shot in over 200 school shootings. And our fears for our kids as they walk through the school doors every day has increased exponentially. And while we may not feel it, and many of our kids don't feel it, the data tells us that the classroom is still one of the safest places our kids can be. The odds that they will be involved in a school shooting is less than 1 in 1 million. And while this does little to settle my heart, I know that good policy comes from good data. Does this mean there is nothing we can do? Of course not. But it does mean that adding more guns in the form of armed teachers, armed guards, and licensed armed security, as one member of this board has called for, is not the answer. Did having an armed sheriff's deputy stop 17 people from dying at Marjory Stoneman Douglas? 10 people from being killed in Santa Fe High School? How about Fort Hood, the Navy Yard? There are numerous accounts of officers being killed in or outside of police buildings, even here in Fairfax County. Were the many armed officers inside a deterrent to those shooters? No. So if fortifying our schools isn't the answer, what is? School safety is about more than active shooter drills. It's about what we are doing as a school system to support all of our students, especially the ones who are struggling. Better access to mental health professionals during the school day is essential to supporting our students' emotional and mental health. Better school environments rely on having more psychologists and social workers in our schools. The proposed 18 additional staff is not nearly enough. School psychologists and social workers are key to helping students and staff understand kids with disabilities, helping students cope with bullying, helping military kids transition, and helping promote tolerance and understanding of different religions, races, and sexual orientations. The $18 million that has been proposed to put SROs in elementary schools could provide 140 more mental health professionals, which still would not add even 1 more full-time professional to all 196 of our schools and centers. Our own FCPS internal security review states that research has shown that the most effective way to ensure a safe school is to have a positive climate. The best way to achieve this goal is by fully staffing our schools with mental health professionals, not armed security. Thank you for your time.
Stephanie Hamel, Jeffrey Sherratt, Justine Byun,
Thank you. I would like to start off by thanking the school board for their tremendous stamina in sitting through this meeting and hearing all our testimony. And I'd also like to thank moms and the NAACP and everyone else who has spoken so eloquently in solidarity with them and for the emphasis on mental health professionals over the hardening of our schools. They've done such a great job. I just want to speak very specifically about the idea of arming teachers in the hope that doing so will allow them to stop a school shooter situation. This is not an idle worry for me, as my oldest daughter will be entering FCPS in, about a year, and I want her to be in the safest system possible. Arming teachers will not make her or any other child safer. I could go on at length about the dangers of accidental firearm discharges or misplaced loaded weapons, or even how trained professionals can mistake fellow responders or civilians for the active shooter in stressful situations. Instead, I want to simply focus on the implausibility of the belief that a good guy with a gun can simply and safely stop a bad guy with a gun. In movies and TV shows and video games, we see the good guy with a gun stop any bad guy with a gun with a few well-aimed shots. But reality is different. We know this because there have been multiple studies done on the effects of stress on the small arms accuracy of soldiers in combat situations. Soldiers are people who expect to be put into combat situations who are given extensive training in the use and handling of their weapons. And yet, studies have found that their shooting accuracy drops by a factor of 10 when they have to move from the shooting range to a mobile situation where they take cover, shoot, and do all sorts of things. And that accuracy drops by a further factor of 10 when the target fires back. Additional studies have found that this is not confined just to long distances on the field of battle. While one might expect that accuracy goes up the closer a soldier is to a target, studies have shown that proximity actually decreases accuracy, something that is highly relevant considering the close confines of modern school buildings. These results are due to the impact of stress on the human body. Increased heart rate, muscle tension, and hormones are changes that happen when the fight or flight reflex kicks in. Priority is given to the gross motor control needed to run, punch, or kick, all at the expense of fine motor control, the very thing needed to precisely aim a firearm at a moving target. Learning to compensate for this reflex requires extensive training beyond simply practicing at a gun range. To impart that experience to every teacher that carries a gun would be phenomenally cost prohibitive. Without that training, armed teachers would be more likely to accidentally kill or injure a student with a stray bullet than they would be to stop the active shooter. Putting guns in the hands of insufficiently trained civilians is extremely reckless. And what's more, I don't want my daughter or any other child to be in a system where teachers mentally prepare themselves to take the lives of any student that goes rogue with a gun. I don't want children to be in a place where the solution to flying bullets is simply more bullets. So please move forward with the recommendations from the review and continue the focus on teaching and helping our kids. Thank you for your time.
Justine Byun, Amanda Campbell, and William Horkan.
Good evening. My name is Justine Byun. I'm a county resident, an active voter, a teacher in Prince William County Schools, and most importantly, a mom of 2 high schoolers within Fairfax County Schools. I'm speaking tonight as a mother and educator in opposition to placing school resource officers within the county's elementary and more middle schools, and asking instead to fund more psychologists and counselors in all schools throughout the county. School today is very different than when most of us grew up, and no one can deny that my children and their generation have been exposed to or more fearful of direct threats of violence at school or nearby. But hardening our schools with more cops and possibly arming teachers is not the answer. And these measures do not truly address the problems our children face. As a school employee at a Title I elementary school, I know that teachers frequently have taken on the roles of counselor, disciplinary, and other many roles. But just this year, I have had a kindergartner tell me about how his father was thrown out of the house by his mom the night before. I've seen several families move more than once within the same school year, due to issues with affordable housing. And listened as my 5th grade student with learning disabilities explained how she couldn't get her homework done at home because it was too loud. These are the kids who need our help and support, and yes, that costs money. We are teachers who are passionate about our students, but there are no teachers or administrative staff that I work with who wants to carry a gun. That is not in our training. And we also don't want our students to feel like they're walking into a jail either. Fairfax County students need more support instead from qualified professionals like social workers, counselors, and psychologists. But sadly, the average school psychologist is covering multiple schools, and most of their resources are for testing and reevaluations. We need to support our at-risk students to pay more for psychologists and counselors within the county, and certainly go way beyond 18 more staff, social workers and psychologists at the middle school level. Others tonight have referenced studies that showing the minorities and disabled students are much more likely to be suspended for relatively subjective infractions like disrespect, insubordination, and classroom disruption. Hiring more behavioral psychologists can help us get to the root of perhaps and prevent these type of issues in the future. And I feel like that is a better investment than spending $18 million or more in firearms or funding school resource officers at the elementary school level. Young children actually seek out hugs from their teachers and we don't want them to hug a teacher and feel a holster on their hip or accidentally see a gun in a drawer. Let's try for a more holistic approach to addressing local students' needs in less punitive ways and fund more counseling and check-in and check-out programs. Thank you for the opportunity.
Amanda Campbell, William Horkan, and Jen Monago.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Campbell, and as a parent of a child with a disability, I have some thoughts to share on the internal security review. Regarding the conversation on lockdown drills, I have a few thoughts. First, the tabletop drills absolutely need to happen annually. Secondly, substitute teachers need more comprehensive training on these drills. As a sub myself in Fairfax County, the most information I've ever gotten in a classroom is basically to read the Red Book, which doesn't help me to know of any students with disabilities and accommodations they may need, or classroom-specific procedures that I may need to know about. Even when I show up 20 to 30 minutes before my report time, which is an hour earlier than students arrive, there's not enough time to prep the content I need to teach and also review the procedures in detail. For as many subs as FCPS has in schools on a daily basis, this is a security weakness that must be addressed. If a student has an IEP, that IEP should also state the procedure for what that student will do in a lockdown situation so that both home, school, and all educators within that school are on the same page. This is especially true for students like my daughter who have mobility challenges and will need significant assistance in order to follow through on drill procedures and do not have one-to-one aides. Regarding school resource officers in elementary schools, I understand the argument for them. That said, I also see the disproportionality that exists now. Students with disabilities make up 14% of the population of FCPS and yet represent 40% of the discipline cases in the district. This is similar to nationwide data from the Department of Education that shows 12% of the population is students with disabilities, and yet they represent nearly 25% of students arrested at school. This data is alarming, and I cannot envision any future improvements without significant changes to our MOU. Given the existing disproportionality, it is imperative that all of our school resource officers at all school levels receive more comprehensive training in child development, students with disabilities, and de-escalation techniques. In their Policing in Schools document, the ACLU recommends that every school resource officer shall receive at least 40 hours of pre-service training and 10 hours of annual in-service training on the following topics: child and adolescent development and psychology, positive behavioral interventions and supports, conflict resolution, peer mediation or other restorative justice techniques, children with disabilities or other special needs, and cultural competency. It is additionally disturbing to learn that in Virginia, children can be questioned by SROs without a parent present and have their responses be admissible in a court of law. I agree with the NAACP and Fairfax County SEPTA that SROs should not be a part of the administrative team of a school, as doing so then allows a lesser standard for probable cause than probable cause for search and seizure, and does not always require that an SRO inform a child of their Miranda rights. These facts must be taken into consideration when talking about adding SROs to elementary schools, as this population especially, both neurotypical and neurodiverse children, cannot and should not be expected to understand their legal rights. Wrapping up. The data in front of us now that shows the need to determine why this disproportionality exists in FCPS, and I have watched school board members call for the ACSD to explore this very topic. Negative interactions with SROs can impact children, all children, but especially children with disabilities, for years. We have a responsibility to our students with disabilities to do that exploration before we add SROs into our elementary schools, where the foundation of our children's educational experience is built. Thank you for your time.
William Horkan, followed by Jen Monago and Diane Cooper-Gold.
Hi, I'm Bill Horkan. I've been teaching in Fairfax County for 22 years, the last 21 of which have been at Stewart/Justice High School. I've encountered many situations. I've encountered fights. I've encountered brawls where I was at Stewart when we were within a mile of one of the shootings of the Beltway sniper. However, I've never encountered a situation where the presence of a gun would make it better. I've encountered many situations where the presence of additional counselors or mental health professionals would have made it better. That's first. Second, Several people in the school board were against the name change for Stewart High School. The main reason for that they gave was that one-time cost of less than $500,000 would take away from the education of students. If you add guns to the school, it would take away the chance of adding counselors or mental health professionals, not for 1 year, but for year after year after year. For those two reasons, I'm against any motion that would add guns to the school. Thank you. That's all.
Jen Monago, Diane Cooper-Gould, and then Helen Lee.
Hi, I'm Jen Monago. I'm a parent of two, well, one and soon to be another student at Forestville Elementary School in Great Falls. And the message has been pretty clear. So all the notes that I wrote in preparation for this, I'm not going to reiterate everything that has been said because I think the community has spoken pretty loud and clear as to how we would like to proceed based on the report. And that is, our children, it's hard to be a kid, now more than ever before. My child is 7, and he already has anxiety. He visits the school counselor like once a week. That's one counselor for the entire elementary school. I can't imagine what her job must be like to handling all of these children in her care, knowing that she can do so much more if she just had more resources. Being able to affect our children's lives, especially in the elementary school, is just going to make the transition to middle school and then high school so much easier, lowering our suicide rates, lowering our depression rates, really affecting these child's lives on a real, tangible level versus throwing money at a problem that honestly, as statistics have shown, is not quite there. I'd rather invest proactively instead of reactively. And if you can just put a couple more counselors in every school, I know that, like I said, the community has spoken and made that completely clear that that is what we desire. And I really hope that you take all of the notes that we have brought to you, all the statistics, all the stories, and all of the pleas from your community, and really think about the amount of money that you're about to invest, and think about the long-term, positive, holistic approaches to this issue versus knee-jerk reactions. Thank you.
Diane Cooper-Gould, Helen Lee, and Andrew Twig.
Good evening, I'm Diane Cooper-Gould, disability advocate, and I am the mother of a 13-year-old boy who is autistic. Tonight I registered to speak on my own behalf rather than that of the organization I lead. So I wanted to start by saying I am 100% behind Dr. Brabrand's request for funding the additional 18 mental health professionals in our schools. I don't think that goes far enough. Like many people here, I wish we were funding and looking at funding them in every school. So taking care of student mental health is critical. I also applaud the timely review of our security practices post-Parkland, but I do have some pretty severe concerns. I did watch the full June 18th work session where the plan was presented to the work group, and I did hear Mr. Plattenberg say that FCPS had reached out for a lot of community feedback. But at no point was Fairfax County SEPTA or any other disability organization that I am aware of contacted for feedback. We want to work with you. The school board cannot accurately claim that the public is behind having armed SROs in all schools, including elementary schools, or accurately make the claim that it makes parents feel safer. Whose parents are you talking to? Are you talking to the parents of Black and Latino students? Are you talking to immigrant parents? We know you're not talking to parents of students with disabilities. According to the Washington Post, at any given day, there is a 1 in 614 million chance that a child will be killed in a school shooting. That is less than the chance of a child being killed in a sporting accident at school. However, the reality is that every single day, students with disabilities are criminalized for behaviors relating to their disabilities. Per FCPS data, there are 22 disruptive behavior referrals per 100 students made against students with disabilities, more than any other subgroup in Fairfax County. 30 to 40% of the jail and prison populations are people with at least one disability. Talk about school to prison pipeline. I'm not interested in safety and security theater. I'm not interested in making people feel safer. I am asking this community to do the research and find out what actually makes students safer in schools. I don't know, it seems like this is an educated audience, but I don't know if parents realize that SROs can detain and question any student without notifying their parents. And anything a child says can be used against him in court. This is incredibly problematic for students with cognitive and developmental disabilities. As a parent of an autistic boy who is 13, this terrifies me. Like many autistic people, my son can be triggered into an autistic meltdown as a manifestation of his disability. A police officer with no disability training will see that behavior and make assumptions about my son that have the power, to ruin his life permanently via arrest, traumatization, or removal from our home. Without clear limits on the use of SROs in schools, SROs are a more real danger to a child with a disability than any active shooter. I would like to ask moving forward that this board really think about what equity means in all areas and start taking active steps to include disabled population in its community discussions. Thank you.
And following Ms. Lee, Andrew Twig, and then I'll go back to those who didn't show up earlier. But before I continue on, I do want to thank and recognize Delegate Marcus Simon here in the audience. I know that our policymakers in Richmond are also looking at this issue closely, so I appreciate you being here.
Okay, so hi, my name is Helen, and I am an alum of FCPS schools. I went to TJ, and I don't remember any SROs from when I was there. I graduated in 2012. I want to start off with a quote from A Wrinkle in Time. This is from one of the special editions, and this is from the afterwords by Lingle's daughter, Charlotte. So she's talking about some of the drafts of the books, and what was left out. So when Calvin, Meg, and Mr. Murray made their desperate tespur from Camisards to Ishel, Mr. Murray tries to explain to Meg and Calvin the nature of the dark thing in it. His thesis has an eerie resonance today, positing that a planet can become dark because of totalitarianism, but a planet can also become dark because of too strong a desire for security, the greatest evil there is. Meg resists her father's analysis. What's wrong with wanting to be safe? Mr. Murray insists that lust for security forces false choices and a panic search for safety and conformity. This reminds me that my grandmother would get very annoyed when anyone would talk about the power of love. Love, she insisted, is not power, which is considered always coercive. To love is to be vulnerable, and it is only in vulnerability and risk, not safety and security, that we overcome darkness. So I think when we talk about false choices, I think there's a paradox when we talk about SROs, because in order for there are cops in schools, and in order for one to be useful in an incident of a mass shooting, they need to be instantly mentally prepared to shoot a student. But in all other cases, we do not want someone who is mentally prepared to shoot a student to be anywhere near a school. And I think it's been made very clear that SROs have a very disproportionate impact on kids who are Black, Latinx, Native, disabled, trans, and gender nonconforming, as people from NAACP and SEPTA and Moms Demand Action made very clear. So after hearing all these stories from other groups, I think it's worth asking whose security and whose safety are we aiming for? And I think one last thing is, in looking at the proposal, I would also ask for there to be more translated and language resources for mental health. TJ recently had a suicide, and a lot of the resources and notifications weren't in other languages. And considering how there are so many immigrant backgrounds in Fairfax County, I think we really need to make sure that these immediate responses and immediate notifications aren't something that like parents can understand. So thank you.
Thank you. My name is Andy Twig. I am a Lee District resident, a graduate of now Justice High School, and a current NAACP and FCDC member. I first want to recognize that I fully endorse the statements and positions of the Fairfax NAACP, Sean Perryman, and Kofi Annan. I am deeply concerned about the racial disparities that have been discussed here today and that we all know exist, and I'm also very concerned about the school-to-prison pipeline that exists here. I want to talk about how I think the MOU, as currently drafted, hampers the security of our schools. And I think it's important that we talk about how our resources for police officers are being distributed. And if they are involved in these administrative matters of fighting or disorderly conduct, can we really say that they're effectively concentrating on the harm that you're talking about addressing right now? And I think the answer is no. I think it's important that if we're going to invest resources in anything, maybe it would be in making sure that the officers are securing the schools and not bothering and getting involved in petty disputes and fights and anything else like that. And certainly not working as administrators. I know you all here are acutely aware of the money and the demands on our school system, and frankly, it's still underfunded. And when we're talking about adding more guns, any kind of teacher, I mean, that's crazy, but, you know, more guns in schools in general is, you know, I'd rather have another teacher than a police officer in our schools. Thank you. In any event, I just want to reiterate these comments and thank you all for your time and understanding and for your consideration of this. Thank you.
I'd like to go back to the list. Mr. Jonathan Smith, Karan Marari, David Kinsler, Sujata Hampton, Stephanie Hamel,
Hi. I am a Fairfax County Public School elementary school teacher, and I am here to, excuse me if this is the first time I've been in one of these settings and I might not have the etiquette down, but the thought
You're fine.
the thought that we might further criminalize Black and brown students in spaces that we're trying to make safe is deplorable to me. When do students really feel safe? When do teachers really feel safe? We feel safe when we feel heard and when we feel seen. And what do teachers really want? They want support. They want support to help students feel heard and seen. Sometimes that support comes from professional development that we get in work that we can do around having conversations so that we can help our students feel heard and seen with these tough, critical issues that they're dealing with today. Sometimes it happens when a teacher is not experienced with the kind of need that a student has, but needs the extra support of a social worker or counselor. In any case, there is hard work that we need to do around how students feel heard and seen. We can do that work. So there is no excuse for us moving to Band-Aid solutions. Because teachers want to do this work with their students, we need the support from you to do that work. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the public will have another opportunity to address the board on this topic at a public hearing scheduled for July 17th. Online registration for that hearing will be open until 4:30 p.m. on July 16th. Thank you again for all of your comments, and we will take a brief recess before convening our regular business meeting. Thank you.